My sister tried to steal our grandfather's entire estate and frame me for elder abuse to do it. She thought she had the court, our parents, and the narrative on her side, until one envelope walked into the courtroom and turned her pale. What she didn't realize? Grandpa had already set a trap, and she walked straight into it. My name's Maren Hale, 32, female. I keep thinking that if I rub my hands hard enough, the whole last month will wipe off like dirt. It doesn't. It just smears. Let me rewind, because the court part comes later and I need you to understand the people in this story before you decide who you hate. Grandpa Walter Hale, 84, male, was the only person in my family who loved me in a way that didn't come with conditions. He was blunt, stubborn, and weirdly gentle when nobody was watching. He was the type to call me kiddo, even after I turned 30, and the type to pretend he didn't need help, until he did. My sister, Victoria Hale, 35, female, has always been the opposite of him. Smooth, loud when it benefits her, quiet when it doesn't. She's the kind of person who wears calm like perfume and panic like a weapon. Growing up, she was the sun in our house. I was whatever planet didn't get named. Our dad, Richard Hale, 59, male, is a keep-it-in-the-family guy, meaning keep it quiet, keep it controlled, keep it looking good. Our mom, Elaine Hale, 57, female, cries the way other people negotiate. She can turn tears on and off like a faucet, and somehow you end up apologizing to her after she hurts you. So when Grandpa fell in his driveway last winter and pretended he was fine, until he wasn't, he called me, not them. "I don't want the circus," he said, voice low, like he was confessing a crime. "Just you." I moved into his house for a few months. I brought my laptop, my work clothes, my boring life. I expected meds, meals, doctor visits. I didn't expect warfare. At first, Victoria showed up in bursts, heels clicking on Grandpa's hardwood like she owned it, hair perfect, smile too wide. "Grandpa, we should simplify your accounts." "Grandpa, it's not safe for Maren to be handling this stuff." "Grandpa, we can take that burden off you." Burden. That word always made my chest go tight, because it was how my parents talked about me when they thought I couldn't hear. One night, I came home with Grandpa's prescriptions and found a stranger in the living room holding a clipboard. A mobile notary. My dad stood behind him like hired muscle. My mom had a folder open on the kitchen table. Victoria sat on the couch with her legs crossed like she was waiting for a manicure. Grandpa was in his recliner, hands clamped so hard on the armrests his knuckles looked white as chalk. "Oh, good," Victoria said, bright and rehearsed. "You're here. We're just getting a couple signatures so everything's taken care of." I looked at Grandpa. His eyes met mine. Not asking. Warning. My stomach dropped so fast I swear I felt it in my teeth. "What are you signing?" I asked. Victoria didn't even blink. "Estate updates. Adult stuff." Then my dad, too calm. "Maren, don't start." Grandpa's voice cut through all of them, quiet but lethal. "No." The notary froze. Victoria's smile didn't move. Her eyes did. "Grandpa," she said, still sweet, "stop being difficult." He didn't. He repeated it. "No." And that's when Victoria leaned closer to me, just enough that nobody else heard her, and whispered the first true thing she'd said all month. "You're not going to be in this house much longer." After Victoria whispered that I wouldn't be in the house much longer, something in me shifted. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just cold. Grandpa didn't say anything while they shuffled the notary back toward the door, but once the house was quiet again, he stared at the spot where Victoria had been sitting. "They're in a hurry," he muttered. I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. Over the next week, the visits increased. Victoria started coming by to check on him, but she never came alone. Either Dad showed up pretending it was coincidence, or Mom arrived with soup and soft eyes, asking leading questions. "Walter, are you sure Maren isn't overwhelmed? Are you managing your medications okay? Are you feeling pressured about anything?" They weren't worried about him. They were building a record. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and found Mom standing too close to Grandpa, phone angled slightly toward him. Just say you're tired, she whispered. Just say you're confused sometimes. Grandpa looked up at me, and in that second I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear, not of me, of them. That night, he asked me to drive him somewhere. Not to his usual attorney, the one Dad golfed with, but to a bank across town none of us had ever used, Hawthorne National. We met with a trust officer named Thomas Avery. Quiet man, plain suit. No theatrics. He spoke directly to Grandpa, not around him. They met alone first. When I was called in, Grandpa's voice was steady. We're setting up a trust, he said. Thomas explained the structure carefully. Corporate trustee. Assets transferred into the trust, irrevocable upon death. And then he explained the clause. If any beneficiary filed litigation attempting to seize trust-controlled assets in violation of its terms, they would automatically forfeit their distribution. Grandpa didn't look at Thomas when he said it. He looked at me. They're going to try, he said. I wanted to argue, to defend them. But I couldn't. Not after the notary. Not after the recording attempt in the kitchen. Everything was documented. Video execution, capacity affidavit, witnesses. Grandpa insisted on it all. He even wrote a letter and sealed it. If they accuse you, he said quietly, this gets read. I didn't know what was inside. 3 months later, Grandpa died in his sleep. I held his hand until the hospice nurse arrived. The house felt hollow. The clock in the hallway ticked too loudly. Victoria arrived before the funeral home did. No hug, no tears. She walked through the living room like she was inventorying furniture. 2 days after the funeral, I was served. Victoria had filed a petition demanding immediate transfer of all estate authority to her. The document accused me of isolating Grandpa, restricting access, exerting undue influence. Elder abuse. Seeing it in black ink felt like someone punched straight through my ribs. Dad called that evening. If you just step aside, he said calmly, we can avoid making this public. Public. Like I was the one threatening scandal. Victoria didn't call. She posted a vague social media statement about protecting vulnerable elders from exploitation within families. The comments rolled in. Sympathy, praise, and then the real-world escalation started. The first night, they pounded on the front door, shouting that I was destroying evidence. The second night, Dad tried the back handle. And the third night, at 3:14 a.m., a brick came through the living room window, shattering the glass beneath Grandpa's framed photo. Attached to it was a note. You deserve nothing. I didn't cry. I called Thomas at Hawthorne National, and he said one sentence that changed everything. They received certified copies of the trust documents yesterday, he told me. They knew about the clause before filing. Victoria hadn't filed out of ignorance. She filed anyway. And that meant something far worse than grief. It meant she thought she could intimidate me into backing down before the trap closed. The hearing was set for 10 days later. And in those 10 days, my family stopped pretending this was about Grandpa. It was about control, and they were willing to burn everything to get it. The 10 days before the hearing felt like living inside a pressure cooker that someone kept tightening. I stopped sleeping properly after the brick. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The fridge kicking on, the pipes shifting, the wind catching the siding. Grandpa's recliner sat in the living room like a witness. I didn't move it. I couldn't. Victoria didn't stop either. 2 days after the brick incident, she escalated publicly. She showed up at my job. I work at a mid-sized design firm downtown. Nothing glamorous, but steady. Around 11 a.m., my receptionist texted me. There's a woman here asking for you. She seems upset. I already knew. When I walked into the lobby, Victoria was standing there in a fitted navy coat, clutching a folder like it was a prop. Her eyes were red, but I've known her long enough to know the difference between crying and rehearsing tears. Can we talk? She asked, loudly enough for the entire front desk to hear. No, I said quietly. This is not the place. That's when she raised her voice. She isolated our grandfather, she announced, like she was testifying to the room. She manipulated him while he was confused. People froze. Co-workers stared. My face went hot. then ice cold. "You need to leave," I said. Victoria stepped closer, invading my space. "Return what you stole and we'll drop the abuse complaint." Abuse complaint. There wasn't even a formal APS filing yet. Just the accusation in her petition. Security had to escort her out. She didn't go quietly. She cried in the lobby, said she was protecting an elder. She made sure everyone heard the phrase. That afternoon, HR called me in. Not accusatory, just concerned. But the damage was done. When someone plants the word abuse next to your name, it sticks. That night, I came home to find something worse than broken glass. Grandpa's shed, where he kept his old tools and fishing gear, had been forced open. The lock snapped, boxes overturned, papers scattered in the dirt. They were looking for something, documents. They didn't find any. The trust documents were already with Hawthorne National. But the violation, that felt personal. I called the police again. Another report. Another note in the record. When I texted Victoria to tell her to stay off the property, she didn't deny it. She replied, "If you weren't hiding things, you wouldn't be scared." Scared? I wasn't scared. I was angry. The next morning, Thomas from Hawthorne called. "There was another portal attempt last night," he said. "Same device ID as before." Victoria. "Was it blocked?" I asked. "Yes, and logged." Logged. Everything was logged. And that's when it clicked for me. She wasn't spiraling randomly. She was racing the clause. Victoria had received certified notice of the trust, including the no contest clause, before she filed the petition. If the court ruled she had knowingly violated it, she forfeited everything. So she was trying to build a narrative strong enough to scare me into withdrawing before that ruling happened. If I backed down, if I settled, maybe she could argue good faith. But if I held firm, the clause would execute. That realization didn't make me feel powerful. It made me feel hunted. Because Victoria doesn't lose gracefully. The night before the hearing, my car tires were slashed. All four, parked in Grandpa's driveway. A message without words. I stood there in the dark, staring at the sagging rubber, and felt something inside me stop trying to reason with her. This wasn't about grief anymore. This was about control. And Victoria was willing to destroy my job, my home, my safety, just to force me to flinch first. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I called Thomas and asked for something very specific. "Send me written confirmation," I said, "that she received the trust documents before filing." He paused. "You're preparing for impact," he said. "Yes," I replied. Because tomorrow, in court, she was going to try to make me look like a monster, and I was done defending myself with emotion. I was going to defend myself with her own timeline. The morning of the hearing, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I slept well, because I didn't sleep at all. My car still sat on blocks in Grandpa's driveway. 4 slashed tires. The police report from the night before lay on the kitchen table next to the brick with the note, "You deserve nothing," sealed in an evidence bag. I kept both. Not for revenge. For record. Victoria had vandalized property, attempted unauthorized access to the trust portal twice, caused a public disturbance at my workplace, filed a petition demanding immediate transfer of trust assets despite receiving certified notice of the no contest clause. Those weren't feelings. Those were timestamps. At the courthouse, she looked radiant. Cream coat, hair smooth, makeup flawless. She even hugged Mom in the hallway like this was a family wedding instead of a legal ambush. Dad didn't look at me. When the case was called, Victoria stood immediately. Her attorney launched into it like he'd been rehearsing all week. "Your Honor, we are asking for emergency authority over the estate due to ongoing financial exploitation and destruction of evidence by the respondent." Destruction of evidence. I almost laughed. Daniel didn't interrupt. He let them speak. Let them stack their accusations high. They presented affidavits again. Claimed Grandpa was fearful. Claimed I isolated him. Claimed I controlled his communications. Then Victoria did something she hadn't done before. She cried. Not subtle tears, full sobbing. "My grandfather was confused," she said, voice shaking. "He didn't understand what he was signing. She kept us away. We were scared to intervene. The judge listened. Then Daniel stood. We request that Hawthorne National's trust representative be heard before any ruling, he said calmly. Victoria's head snapped toward him. Her attorney objected, but the judge allowed it. The courtroom doors opened. Thomas Avery walked in with a folder and a sealed envelope. The energy shifted. Thomas stated clearly that Grandpa had executed the trust with full capacity, in private, on video, with witnesses. That certified copies had been delivered to all beneficiaries, including Victoria, before the petition was filed. Then Daniel submitted the security logs. 2 attempted unauthorized portal access attempts after notice. Time-stamped, device-matched. Victoria's attorney's face changed slightly. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Hale, he said to Victoria, did you receive certified notice of the trust, including the no contest clause, the day before filing your petition? Victoria hesitated. Yes, she said. Silence. And you understood its contents? Another pause. Yes. There it was. Not confusion, not ignorance. Intent. The judge marked the no contest clause into record and denied emergency transfer. Victoria went pale, but she didn't stop. Your Honor, she blurted out, voice rising, this is elder abuse. He was manipulated. The judge looked tired now. Do you have medical evidence? A PS reports? Police complaints filed prior to his death? No, she snapped, because we were trying to protect him privately. Daniel slid one more item across the bench. Grandpa's sealed letter. The judge opened it. He read aloud. If you are reading this in court, it means my son and his family attempted to seize my estate by accusing my granddaughter. On the night my son brought a notary to force signatures, I called 911. I refused to sign. If they call this elder abuse, they are projecting their own pressure. Mom made a strangled sound. Dad's jaw tightened. Victoria gripped the table so hard her knuckles turned white. The judge looked directly at her. You filed despite notice of the clause. You attempted access after filing, and now you raise an abuse allegation without contemporaneous evidence. He paused. Sanctions hearing will be set. That's when Victoria lost control. She stood up so abruptly her chair slammed backward. This isn't fair, she shouted. She stole from him. The bailiff stepped forward. Ms. Hale, sit down. She didn't. She pointed at me, shaking. She destroyed evidence. She smashed the window herself. I didn't move, because Daniel was already handing over the police reports for the brick, the vandalized shed, the slashed tires. Documented, filed, time-stamped. The judge's expression hardened. Court is recessed. Victoria tried to lunge toward me again in the aisle. The bailiff physically blocked her. Her mask was gone now. No polish, no control, just rage. And for the first time since this started, I realized something that felt almost dangerous to admit. She wasn't winning. She was unraveling, and the clause hadn't even fully executed yet. When court recessed, Victoria didn't storm out like a normal person who just embarrassed herself. She doubled down. Right there in the hallway, in front of strangers, she started screaming that the judge was corrupt and that I had coached Grandpa. Mom began crying on cue, clutching her purse like someone had died again. Dad tried to pull Victoria back, but she yanked her arm away so hard she almost fell. You don't get to walk away smiling, she hissed at me. I wasn't smiling. I was steady. There's a difference. By that afternoon, Hawthorne National formally issued notice. Victoria's distribution was suspended pending enforcement of the no contest clause. Because she had acknowledged receiving the trust documents before filing, the clause was now under review for automatic forfeiture. She found out within hours, and that's when the real meltdown started. I was home when my phone exploded with notifications. Victoria had gone live on social media. Not a post, a live stream, crying, red-faced, shaking. She trapped him, she sobbed. She isolated him and forged everything. The bank is protecting her. Hundreds of viewers, comments flying. Then she did something reckless. She posted screenshots of what she claimed were Grandpa's bank statements. Except they weren't. They were partial screenshots she'd tried to obtain through the beneficiary portal before being blocked. You could see the failed login banner at the top. She'd just publicly admitted attempted unauthorized access. I didn't respond online. Instead, I sent the recording to Thomas at Hawthorne and to Daniel. Documentation. That evening, things escalated physically again. I heard tires screech in the driveway. Victoria. She didn't knock this time. She kicked the door so hard the frame splintered. I saw her through the side window, wild-eyed, mascara streaked, holding something in her hand. It was Grandpa's old fishing rod, the one he kept in the shed. She must have taken it during the break-in. "You think you win?" she screamed. "You don't win?" Then she snapped the rod over her knee and threw the pieces across the yard. That hurt more than the brick. The police arrived before she could do more damage. She resisted being placed in the car. Not violent enough to be arrested, but enough to be recorded. Another report. Another timestamp. The next day, something unexpected happened. The trustee filed a formal declaration with the court. It outlined: certified notice delivered before filing. 2 attempted unauthorized portal accesses. Public dissemination of partial financial screenshots. Interference behavior following denial of emergency transfer. It requested enforcement of the no contest clause in full. Dad called that night. Not angry, desperate. "Marin, we can still fix this," he said. "Withdraw the request for enforcement." "I didn't request enforcement," I replied calmly. "Victoria triggered it." Silence. "You're tearing this family apart," Mom whispered when she took the phone. I looked at the broken fishing rod pieces still scattered in the yard. "No," I said quietly. "She did." Sanctions hearing was set for 10 days later. And in those 10 days, Victoria spiraled further. She contacted my employer again, this time anonymously, alleging financial fraud. HR forwarded the email to me because it referenced the active court case inaccurately. She sent letters to extended relatives claiming I was under criminal investigation. She even showed up at church and interrupted service to ask for prayers for a family betrayed by greed. But every escalation added to the record. Every outburst built the timeline. And when the sanctions hearing arrived, the judge didn't need emotion. He had evidence. And Victoria had given it to him herself. Sweet revenge doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from letting someone unravel on record. And she was unraveling beautifully. The sanctions hearing didn't feel dramatic when I woke up that morning. It felt clinical, like surgery. Victoria had spent the last 10 days detonating every emotional bomb she could find. Livestream rants, anonymous emails to my employer, church interruptions, breaking Grandpa's fishing rod in the yard like that was some kind of symbolic victory. But today wasn't about emotion. It was about record. I sat at the same courtroom table as before, Daniel beside me, Thomas from Hawthorne National a few rows back. Victoria looked different this time. Not polished, tired, mascara heavier, jaw tighter, eyes darting like she expected something to jump out at her. The judge began by summarizing. Certified notice of the trust, including the no contest clause, delivered to Victoria before filing. Victoria acknowledged under oath she received and understood it. She filed a petition demanding immediate transfer of all assets anyway. 2 unauthorized portal access attempts after filing. Public dissemination of partial financial screenshots. Vandalism reports. Workplace disturbance. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Victoria's attorney tried one last pivot. "Your Honor, my client acted out of concern for potential exploitation." The judge cut him off. Concern does not override explicit trust language when notice has been received. Then he looked directly at Victoria. "Ms. Hale, do you dispute that you received certified notice of the trust and its no contest clause before filing your petition?" Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, then said, barely audible, "No." There it was. Clean. Undeniable. The judge turned a page. "Under the language of this trust, your filing constitutes a direct violation. The clause is self-executing." Mom made a soft, choking sound behind her. Dad's shoulders slumped for the first time since this began. The court recognizes the trustee's authority to enforce forfeiture. And just like that, Victoria lost her inheritance. Not because I argued harder, not because I cried better, because she couldn't control herself long enough to respect the document she'd been warned about. But the judge wasn't finished. He addressed the elder abuse allegation. You raise serious claims in open court without contemporaneous evidence, medical reporting, or prior complaint, he said. That carries consequences. Sanctions were imposed, financial penalties for bad faith filing, warning of further action if harassment continued. Victoria stood up too quickly again. "This is rigged," she shouted. The bailiff stepped forward immediately this time. Dad grabbed her arm. "Stop," he whispered harshly. She pulled away, knocking over her own chair. It clattered across the courtroom floor. No one helped her pick it up. That was the moment I realized something strange. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. Because this wasn't a movie ending. It was administrative finality. After court, Thomas confirmed formally, Victoria's distribution forfeited under the no contest clause. Dad and Mom's contingent interests placed under review due to participation in the petition and documented interference. All trust communications now routed through counsel only. No direct contact allowed. No asset modifications without in-person verification. Locked down. That afternoon, I received one last escalation. Victoria showed up at Grandpa's house again. Not to scream. To beg. She stood in the driveway, no makeup, eyes red. "You can still fix this," she said through the door camera. "Tell them I was emotional. Tell them I didn't understand." I looked at the cracked door frame she'd kicked. The broken fishing rod still leaning against the fence where I hadn't had the heart to throw it away. "You understood," I said calmly. "You said so under oath." Her face twisted, then hardened. "You'll regret this," she whispered. But the thing about sweet revenge is this. It isn't loud. It doesn't chase. It doesn't threaten. It simply locks the door and lets the paperwork do what rage never could. Grandpa planned. Victoria reacted. And the record chose its side. 3 weeks after the sanctions hearing, I thought the worst was over. The trust was locked down. Victoria's forfeiture had been formally recognized. Hawthorne had frozen any distribution tied to her name. Mom and Dad's contingent interests were under review because of their participation in the petition and interference. On paper, it was finished. But Victoria doesn't do finished. She does aftermath. It started small. Anonymous reviews on my company's website accusing me of financial misconduct. Fake accounts commenting under old posts about elder exploitation. Someone mailed printed screenshots of her live stream to my office with "liar" written across my face in red marker. HR called me in again. Not accusatory, but weary. "This is escalating," my manager said gently. I nodded. "I know." I brought copies of the court order, the sanctions ruling, the trustee declaration, everything stamped and dated, documentation. It felt humiliating to have to prove I wasn't a criminal in my own workplace, but it also felt powerful to slide those papers across the table. Because Victoria had emotion, I had record. Then she crossed a line that even she couldn't walk back. One night around 10 p.m., my doorbell camera buzzed. It wasn't Victoria. It was Mom, alone. She looked smaller than usual, not crying, not dramatic, just tired. When I opened the door a crack, chain still latched, she didn't yell. "She's not sleeping," Mom said quietly. "She's spiraling. She thinks you're going to take everything." "I'm not taking anything," I replied. "The trust executed as written," Mom's mouth trembled. "You could still tell them not to enforce it." "I don't control the trustee," I said. "You know that." She looked at the broken door frame, the repaired window, the new mailbox post cemented into the ground. Then she said something that told me everything. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. That was it. That was the problem. The next escalation came 2 days later. Victoria filed a civil complaint in small claims court, not about the trust, about emotional distress and reputational harm. She was suing me, claiming my false police reports about vandalism and harassment damaged her professional standing. I actually laughed when I read it. Then I didn't. Because she attached a statement accusing me of staging the brick incident. Staging. Daniel's voice on the phone was steady. "She's digging," he said, "and every time she digs, she hits documented concrete." We responded with certified copies of police reports, security footage timestamps, the live stream recording, the trustee's fraud alert logs. At the preliminary review, the judge dismissed it before it even advanced. Frivolous. Victoria walked out of that courthouse shaking. Not from sadness, from rage. That night, she did something reckless. She tried one more time to access the trust portal, this time using Dad's credentials. Hawthorne flagged it instantly, because Dad's access had been limited after the sanctions hearing. The device ID matched Victoria's previous attempts. That detail mattered. Thomas called Daniel immediately. "This will be included in the final enforcement affidavit," he said calmly. Victoria had just implicated Dad in attempted interference. For the first time, Dad called me not angry, panicked. "What did she do?" he demanded. "You need to ask her," I said quietly. There was shouting in the background, Mom crying, Victoria screaming that everyone was turning on her. And in that moment, I realized something unexpected. This wasn't just about losing money anymore. It was about losing narrative control. Victoria had spent her life being the one who shaped the story. But this time, the story had receipts. And the more she tried to claw it back, the deeper she buried herself. The final enforcement order came on a gray Tuesday morning. No drama. No shouting. Just a stamped document uploaded to the court portal. Victoria's forfeiture under the no contest clause was officially upheld. The trustee's authority was affirmed in full. Dad and Mom's contingent interests were reduced after review due to documented interference but not fully forfeited. Hawthorne determined their involvement, while reckless, didn't rise to independent violation without Victoria's direct filings. Everything was in writing. Everything was final. When I opened the PDF, my hands didn't shake this time. It wasn't victory that washed over me. It was relief. The trust assets remained under Hawthorne's management. The house stayed protected inside the trust. Initial distributions were executed strictly per Grandpa's written terms. No discretionary acceleration, no emotional bargaining. Paperwork doesn't care about tears. Victoria found out the same afternoon. She didn't live stream this time. She didn't show up screaming. She went quiet. And somehow that was more unsettling. 2 days later, Dad came by alone. He didn't try the handle. He knocked. I opened the door fully this time. He looked older. Smaller somehow. "She won't talk to us," he said quietly. "She thinks we betrayed her." I almost laughed at the irony. "You backed her," I said. He nodded once. Slow. "We thought you'd fold." There it was. Not that they thought I abused Grandpa. Not that they were protecting him. They thought I would fold. Dad looked at the repaired window, the reinforced door frame, the new security cameras. "She's talking about moving," he said. "Out of state." I didn't respond. After he left, I walked into the backyard and picked up the broken pieces of Grandpa's fishing rod. I hadn't thrown them away. I cleaned them. Carefully. Because the thing about Victoria breaking it wasn't that it hurt financially. It hurt symbolically. She tried to snap something that connected me to him. But the rod wasn't the connection. The plan was. A week later, Hawthorne completed the final compliance confirmation. All access permanently restricted. Multi-factor authentication locked. In-person verification required for any modification. Fraud alerts documented. Closed. Victoria sent one last message. "You think you won?" I stared at it for a long time before replying. This wasn't about winning. Because it wasn't. Winning would have meant her apologizing. It would have meant my parents admitting they were wrong. It would have meant our family repairing something real. What happened instead was quieter, more permanent. Grandpa knew them. He knew how fast they moved when money was involved. He knew how narratives could be weaponized. He knew Victoria would try to control the story if she couldn't control the assets. So he built something stronger than emotion. He built a record. When someone tries to erase you with a lie, you don't scream louder, you document. Victoria tried to rewrite reality. The trust didn't argue back, it enforced. And in the end, her own urgency, her own rage, her own arrogance pulled the trigger on the clause that cost her everything. Sweet revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting someone run headfirst into the trap they were warned about. Grandpa protected me before he ever died, and my family learned the hardest way possible. Paper doesn't panic.